Hi, Open Noters. Welcome to the Fort Collins Symphony's Open Notes podcast, where we enrich lives through classical music. I'm Norman Manzalis, the Marketing and Community Engagement Director, and with me is my co-host, Alyssa.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Rago, the Education and Patron Development Director. In this podcast, we'll look behind the scenes of the professional music world and explore why music is for everyone.
We're kicking off today's podcast with a new episode in our mini-series, Your Guide to the Orchestra's Instruments.
Today's feature is one of the most well-known instruments in the orchestra. It has so many different sound possibilities. It's known to be an extremely virtuosic instrument. It's an extraordinary solo instrument and ensemble instrument. It's not a bird. It's not a plane. It's the violin.
To help us explore this popular instrument, we're joined by one of our very own FCS musicians, Byron Hitchcock, our concertmaster. Byron, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
For those listening, could you briefly introduce yourself? How did you get started playing the violin?
Oh, yes. So, yes, I'm Byron Hitchcock. I wanted to play the violin when I was 2 years old. I thought it was the most beautiful thing ever. I went to one of those musical zoos where you can go up and touch it with your fingers and everything. And it is my first memory, is my mom taking me to see the violin. And so I was obsessed, and they kept trying to give me gifts that were not violins because they knew I would break it. I kept breaking those instruments on purpose because it was not a violin. I would smash a banjo and that sort of thing.
Oh my gosh. How many instruments did you have to break before they finally realized you weren't going to be fooled?
You know, well, so I think maybe it was my third birthday or so, they got me that banjo, third or fourth, and I broke it. I was sure it was a violin because my dad had gotten out a magazine of musical instruments and said, point to the one that you want and we'll get it for you. So I turn the page. It's not there. Yeah, that one. I want the violin. When it was a banjo, I was just so disappointed. I tried for 20 minutes to enjoy it and then just couldn't handle it and smashed it. It was like, this doesn't make the violin sound.
Yeah.
What was it about the violin that you were attracted to?
Oh, I mean, it's interesting. My sister just had a baby boy. Mm-hmm. He's 2 months old today, I think. And he was just over here yesterday, and I got the violin out and played it for him for the first time. And I could see on his face the exact same feeling I had at age 2, which was, whoa, that's a possibility that exists in life. That's a weird thing that I would never have thought of myself to do. But look how beautifully curved it is. Like the instrument itself is beautiful. And whoa, what is that sound coming out of there? That is... If you've never heard a violin, I mean, everyone's heard a violin now, so it's so hard to think of what that first time is like, but you just saw his eyes get big and mouth open like, my gosh, that can exist. And that was the feeling I had, which never quite went away. So to finish the story out, basically, after I smashed it, my parents didn't try to give me more instruments. They just held off until I stopped accidentally breaking other things, which was 8 years. I had to wait till I was 10 years old before they finally let me have an instrument, which I promptly dropped as soon as they gave it to me. So I'm just a happy-grown person. It's in my blood. In fact, yeah, let me get the violin out and show you. I love making music, and I'm pretty good at it, but I'm not good at keeping my instrument undamaged.
Byron, what did you do?
How eaten up. This violin I bought it new, by the way, back in 1998.
Wow.
And so every mark you see is due to me. This is the left hand, all these tiny little divots in there, and, maybe missing or a fingernail slightly too long. This is a bow, just trying to play as loud as possible. And
I assume these are all from practicing Sibelius, right, for your performance?
yeah, probably. This side looks pretty. Oh no, I must have dropped that at some point. So
yeah, and for everyone who can't see this this interview right now, there's a bunch of little scratches and dings on Byron's instrument from various times he just got a little too excited, shall we say, with the instrument. And so on its most basic level, Byron, how does the instrument produce its sound?
It's a wooden box. There are two holes. They're called the F holes, and they're sort of in the middle of the instrument, and that's where the sound comes out from. There's sort of in between those F holes, there's what we call a sound post. It's just a tiny little cylindrical thing which connects the top of the violin to the bottom of the violin, where there happens to be something called a bass bar, which significantly expands the sound, so that they added that well after the violin was created, once there were bigger halls that they needed to figure out how to fill the sound. So yeah, and then there's the little wood piece you see on top of it is called a bridge. That's what all the strings of the violin go across. And that's sort of made to connect to the sound post and the bass bar as sort of a unit, so that when you draw a bow with horsehair on it, is what they use, and you make it a little sticky by adding basically tree resin to it, that grips the string you're playing well enough so that it vibrates, it oscillates, and that makes the instrument oscillate and vibrate, and then different sounds come out of it. It's still, having said all that, it's still a little bit of a mystery to me how it makes it sound.
Yeah, it is really amazing. And speaking of like incredible moments of realization when it comes to string instruments, it's just tension that holds it together, right? There's no glue anywhere. There's no like nails. I mean, there might be some glue on the seams, but like basically it's the tension of the string strung across all these wooden parts that holds them together, right?
Yep, you take one side of the string and it goes in a peg at the other end of the violin, and then you sort of wrap it around that to hold it together. And then on the other side of the bridge, there's what we call a tailpiece, which has little holes in it, and there's various ways of connecting them to the holes, but there's no glue or anything there. That you just install and take off as desired. It's not like a flute, right, Norman? A flute.
No, it's not.
I need to talk about how that sound comes in. You blow, it comes
I know.
out.
Well, we'll have to do a podcast episode on the flute, and maybe when we get to that point, we'll dive into it. But, for me being the lone wind player in this conversation, I'm just really enjoying hearing you and Alyssa, talk about the strings on the instrument and such.
Yeah, it's complex.
Yeah, with all these different parts and everything, it's very fragile. So what kind of things do you have to do to keep your instrument in good condition?
Well, after seeing all the marks on it, those can affect the sound if you allow them to sit there too long. It is always amazing to me. So there's an amazing violin adjuster in Fort Collins. I would say he's the best one I've met in the world.
Oh, wow.
And that's having lived in Boston for 2 years, New York for 2 years, and having flown back and forth to Boston from Brazil and Canada, because that was the best I had found until I found this guy in Fort Collins.
Wow.
So that's really fun. But anytime I take my violin to him and I have it polished, it just blows my mind how much more the violin can ring. There's something about it getting dry or losing some of that polish that actually makes a difference.
It affects the resonance of the instrument?
Yeah, somehow. You'd think it would dampen it to put more stuff on there, but it's probably not the polish itself. It's probably the fact that he goes through and cleans it before he does the polish. And so he'll take off whatever dirt is built up there over time, and that'll allow the wood to vibrate more freely. But the violin has all kinds of maintenance you need to do to keep it running well. About daily, I wipe the strings because that sticky rosin builds up on it. That means you have to replace the strings more often. Every time you're taking the rosin off, you're taking off a tiny little layer of that string. I use rosin, which really cakes on really intensely, and so I have to do it more often than other people, and so I have to change my strings more often than other people, which is a little annoying. But then that's the other thing, is you have to keep applying that sticky stuff to the bow hair itself, And I just recently discovered a fancy rosin that comes with a comb that you can actually, just like you'd comb your hair, you put it in and you make sure all that rosin is evenly spaced throughout the bow.
Have you noticed a big change in the sound or the tactile quality of playing?
I have, but again, this rosin is developed to be stickier and sort of grab the string more easily. I noticed immediately once I started using it that I could make a bigger sound with it, and I could get articulation, the beginnings of the notes I could mold more easily to be anything that I wanted. Yeah, that's been fun.
Well, I know we've been talking a lot about the maintenance and the mechanics of the instrument, but in your opinion, Byron, what makes the violin so popular and why do you love it?
Well, we talked a little bit about that when we talked about the origin of my love for it, which is the sound of it. The amount of different things it can do as an instrument is really astonishing, and I feel like I'm still learning what it can do. I think the thing that draws people to the violin originally is the beauty of its sound and its ability to sustain a melody well. It's got a range which tends to sit on higher than other instruments. Mm-hmm. And so it's given the melody a lot more by composers because the ear always picks out the highest pitch. Say with the flute. Flute
yeah, I was going to say
than other wind instruments.
I love that. It's funny because I feel like also with me being a flute player, just all the times that I get to play with string instruments, but also specifically the violin, it just is so beautiful. It almost like has this airy quality that has the focus of the violin. It's really pretty.
Yeah, was that the thing that drew you to flute originally? Was the melodic nature?
I would say so, and honestly, if I'm going to be perfectly honest about my reason for choosing the flute, it's because I wanted to sit next to my friends who happened to play the flute. But, in terms of the instrument itself, yeah, I love the melodic quality. And if I were to play, a string instrument, I feel like the violin would be really close competition in terms of what I would be choosing for a string instrument.
Now, Alyssa, you are a string player yourself.
I'm
do you play violin and viola, or is it just viola?
Just viola. I started on viola. So I tried to play the violin once, and it was like so little and uncomfortable. It kept like squirting out the back of my shoulder. Kept dropping. I was in a pit orchestra, so it was
like arms that can really...
Yeah, right. And I remember I knew that viola was the right place for me, but orchestra was, I don't know. I had this moment when like 7th grade, I had just started playing, and there's all these different violinists getting to be concertmaster. And I went up to my orchestra director one day and was like, so when do I get to be concertmaster? And he looked at me and he was like, never. And I was like, what? And he was like, you play the viola. And I was like, excuse me? So that was my moment of, oh, okay, this is what it means to play viola.
So what drew you to viola in the first place? Was it?
I think it was, similar to Norman. My best friend decided she wanted to play the viola, so that really
wow,
by the deal.
Social for both of you.
Yeah.
Totally.
But there was also, we had like this instrument trial day where we got to try out the different string instruments, and the person who was doing the viola was like so nice to me. And she's like, oh, you're just a natural. Oh, you looks like you've done this before. And so of course I ate it all up and was like, yeah, of course I'm really great at it.
Not surprising at all. Violas are the nicest people in the orchestra.
Could you tell us a little bit about the history of the violin? When did it first come into common use, and has it changed at all over the course of its life?
Oh yeah, I mean, like I mentioned about the bass bar, it's changed a bunch over the years. I think it was mid-1500s when the first violin sort of came to be. And so they took a bunch of pre-existing instruments and sort of put a bunch of the elements together to make the violin. But that was sort of the time where you first got these 4 strings that were tuned at the distance they were and that sort of thing. And it was originally considered like a low-class instrument. It was just in bands on the street corners, And so there wasn't much respect for it until they started being able to make violins at a really high quality, which people probably know about the golden age of violin playing when Stradivari came into existence, and del Guarneri del Gesù was another maker, which was maybe 100 to 200 years later. That was sort of how long it took. But yeah, Cremona, Italy is where those violins were made, and Cremona is where the first violins were made 100 to 200 years previous. And so there's really a lot of history around there. If people listening are ever close by, if they're traveling to Italy, it's really worth a little detour to Cremona. They have a Stradivari museum there where if you have any ability, they'll let you take some of the best instruments in the world and play them, because otherwise these instruments don't get played and they degrade over time. They need someone to get them to vibrate to sort of keep them whole. So that happened, and I would say probably, what is that, 1700s, or when Corelli lived. Corelli was the first composer to write a ton of very respectable violin music for the violin, which gave it some basis of respectability among the classes. And then sort of by 1800 it had become the powerhouse that it is now. And that's when you have people like Paganini finding the limits for how crazy stuff you could do with it. And it was around then that the concert halls were expanding, and that's why if you get to play a Stradivarius, if you go to Cremona and play a Stradivarius, the one you're playing is not what Stradivari built. It's an extremely different violin from all the changes they've made over the years. They've taken the neck and they've tilted it back so that it's easier to get around, and they added that bass bar. Chin rest didn't exist when he made those violins. Shoulder rest didn't exist, and so just a ton of it. It would have been a smaller, much gentler sounding instrument back in the day, basically.
Have you ever gone to play a Stradivarius or a Guarneri? And I'm just curious too, when you're listening to someone who is playing one of those instruments, what do you hear is different from, a modern violin maker?
Yeah, good questions. I have not been able to play a very nice instrument. As we know, I'm an accident-prone person. And I just haven't really trusted myself even to pick one of those up. There was a few years ago, I was playing down in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They have a violin shop, Robertson and Sons, which is very well respected.
That's where I got my viola.
Oh, yeah, great. Yeah. I found the violin that I would buy if I had unlimited funds down there, which was 200 grand, something like that. But then there was a 300 grand violin that I played there that I thought sounded terrible. So once you get to a certain level, I think it's about your particular preference for sound and response and all of that. A sad story for me, back in high school, my high school orchestra went to Italy, raised the funds. That was our big trip during high school. And our first visit was to Cremona. And as soon as we arrived, they told us, "Oh, we're sorry, it's under construction. So you can come in and look, but there are no instruments for you to play today." So I got sort of close to maybe playing one, I don't know, decades ago. And I missed my one chance. That's the only time I've been in Italy or close to Cremona.
When you're listening to a Stradivarius or to a really high what do you hear as the differences? So
within the past 10, 15 years, they've actually done some blind playing tests with some of the finest violinists in the world, because the quality of modern violin making was raising so significantly that they thought, well, let's see if people can still tell the difference between the Strads and modern day makers. And I think you can look up the article somewhere online. The result was, no, you can't really tell anymore. It's gotten very, very good. There is something very special about those old instruments in terms of the feel to them as you're playing, but that is a more personal experience than from a listening audience perspective. And while they obviously, those instruments have their own unique voices, they've also had hundreds of years for those to mature. So the ones that are being made now that are considered so great also might continue to mature, and we might find in 100 years that we like those more than the ancient ones, you know?
So the takeaway here is that my viola teacher was always right in saying that never blame the equipment because it's not the equipment's fault if you don't sound good.
Or
Or
it could
it's
be
not
the
great if you
equipment's
can't.
fault.
Yeah.
It could definitely be the equipment's fault.
Well, you had mentioned that, they did these blind tests with a lot of fine violinists. Do you have a particular violinist that you really enjoy their playing? And what is it about their playing that you really love?
Over the years, it has changed a lot in terms of what I look for when I'm listening. When I first got excited about violin, it was Jascha Heifetz.
Of course.
That had all the old LPs, and those were the performances that I would listen, get on my cassette player and just sit all day and listen over and over to Heifetz playing the Tchaikovsky violin concerto or something,
Was it because it was just like his technical accuracy, or?
It was everything. I remember Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto was one that I fell in love with, one of the earliest violin concertos that I fell in love with. And there were multiple recordings of that, and I got so obsessed with it. This is like I'm 10 years old,
Oh my gosh.
And so I found every recording I could, and I was listening to all of them like, why do I love this? Is it the music or is it the player? I think I was trying to figure out. And there were two that I ended up going back and forth between. One was Pinchas Zuckerman, and one was Jascha Heifetz. But to this day, I am absolutely astonished by the Heifetz recording of that, because he adds stuff that is in no edition of the Tchaikovsky concerto.
Really?
Like, Tchaikovsky himself, he wrote this concerto with Leopold Auer, who was Heifetz's teacher. Yeah. And Auer convinced Tchaikovsky to rewrite it here and there. And even in its current version, there are two different possibilities you can play at various points in the concerto. Maybe ones that Tchaikovsky, I like this more, but Auer said this is going to sound better on the violin or something like that. Heifetz doesn't, and there are very old Heifetz recordings I discovered where he does what's written in the current published version. But then the latest recording he made, which was in the 1950s, I think, he does this unbelievable, at the high point of the drama in the first movement, he adds these notes for like 2 or 3 bars. It's just like completely different music than any of them. And it's so astonishing how effective it is. And to this day, I've tried to figure out what the notes are. I can't do it. I still, maybe AI can finally figure out what Heifetz is doing, and then I'll learn it, and we'll perform it with the Fort Collins Symphony or something like that. But
there you go.
yeah, so that was my early hero. Then it became Itzhak Perlman, because he was amazing technically and musically. His sense of humor and his ability to make music naturally was so attractive. And so I have a story of playing for Itzhak Perlman. When I did my undergraduate auditions for violin school, I went to Juilliard, little Wyoming boy who'd never been out of the state. And I remember going into the room so nervous, and I didn't think Itzhak Perlman would be there, because I knew he was listed as a teacher at Juilliard, but he had a huge performing schedule back in 2001. He was traveling everywhere. But then he came into the room, and I was like, okay, I can do this. And I remember I started with Sarasate Zagunnerweisen in the audition, which has just a short little dramatic opening in the piano. And I remember Itzhak acting it out as the piano was playing.
Oh my gosh.
Like that, and that was distracting enough for me that I could. Zagunnerweisen opens in the violin part with a huge, difficult scale, and I was completely thrown off and couldn't. I tried my best to recover, but he Perlman conquered me that day.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of like the non-musical equivalent of that situation, and it's like, you're going into, try out for the Chicago Bulls or something in the 90s, and all of a sudden Michael Jordan's there watching you.
Right,
Just
and
like, okay.
decides to mimic a free throw for you or something like that.
Yes, exactly. That is exactly what it's like.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my
You're
God.
about to take the layup. You
Yeah,
see
right.
Michael Jordan be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah, do like
you can
this.
do it. I'm sure. I'm sure you can do it."
Anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
Oh, but to finish out the arc now, I would say that today, Patricia Kopachiniskaya,
Is she the one who plays barefoot?
maybe she does sometimes. I don't know. I just know that now and then a recording pops up and I'm like, I've never heard that before. And I'm completely convinced by whatever's happening there musically, but no one else has done anywhere close to that. She's the most musically interesting, I think, of the violinists alive today.
That's cool. Cool to hear your arc of like what was important to you at various stages of your musical development.
Yeah, and I guess there's a through line that what convinced me musically. With Heifetz, it was like he found unique ways that maybe the composer hadn't even found or his teacher hadn't found to make a dramatic moment land as well as possible. And with Perlman, it was how convincing he was musically in an informal way that everyone could relate to, that just seemed joyous. And now Patricia's here and she's able to rethink at a level musically that it takes effort to do that with all three of these. I'm sure it took an unbelievable amount of effort and prioritization of what is this music trying to say and what can I do to make that at the most genuine level that I can.
Well, as a professional violinist, what does a typical week look like for you?
Well, I'm not a typical professional violinist. For a lot of people, what it would look like in this area. There's so many different career paths, and they're multiplying as the years go by. Next year, it will be, who's the best AI-assisted violinist, whatever that means. They'll add an AI third arm that'll be capable of doing other double stops or something. But historically, there's been sort of two main paths one could take. You can go for the full-time professional orchestra, which is rare, very hard to land. And then once you get it, that's what you're doing is you're going to rehearsals in the morning frequently, sometimes multiple. You'll come back in the afternoon. And then over the weekend, you give evening shows. And sometimes in the middle of the week, you're giving evening shows. And so most of your life is dedicated to thinking about orchestra music and playing a variety of orchestra music. In this region, it seems to me that a lot of people's main weeks are teaching during the days, a private studio where they help the next generation learn to appreciate and play music to the best of their abilities. And then they go to a variety of different gigs at night. This symphony in Fort Collins this week, the symphony in Cheyenne is the next week, the symphony in Greeley is the next week. An opera is happening this week. I'm going to go play a wedding this afternoon. I've been hired to go do this modern music experiment at an art museum this week. So it's exciting in that it's varied. Every week is different, but you're running to a lot more places and there's a lot more logistics to handle. And I would say that's closer to how my life is right now. I've got 5 different orchestra contracts. 3 are in the Denver area, 1's in Fort Collins, 1's in Colorado Springs. I have only 2 private violin students, 1 in Denver, 1 in Colorado Springs. And so I try to make all that balance, but there's many other different kinds of events that pop up. One in particular that seems to have gotten a lot of popularity in the past few years are these candlelight pops shows.
Yeah.
That exist even in Fort Collins. I know you can go down to the Lyric and see a show now and then, and those are very fun. I've been enjoying those a lot. Play some Queen arrangements for string quartet or some Beatles arrangements, and have a little more fun, a more relaxed time than you would in a full symphony. I wouldn't say more or less fun, but more relaxed.
I have watched you at one of those candlelight concerts, and like they are so much fun, and I feel like it's just like a really more informal setting and opportunities to just like joke and laugh and have fun with that. Going back to Fort Collins, since this is the Fort Collins Symphonies podcast, as our concertmaster, what are the responsibilities that are tied to that position, and what does that actually mean for you?
I've been thinking about the term concertmaster in recent weeks and how silly it is.
Concertmaster is silly.
I have mastered the concert, everybody. No one else in the orchestra has done that. Not the conductor. He's just, moving things through, but I have mastered it completely. That's sort of what the title implies, and that's not the case at all. What the concertmaster is there for is to help everyone else make the music together. A lot of times, I think people might assume that more of the orchestra is attuned to the concertmaster than is actually the case in reality. I would think of the concertmaster as just the principal first violinist. There are a bunch of different sections in the orchestra, and each of them needs someone to look at and follow in terms of where they're going to place their... even there's a flute section, and there's 2 or 3 flutists. And the second flute is going to be watching the first flute and listening and trying to breathe with them. There's followers and then there's leaders. And what I found is that those roles are very frequently mixed. Mm-hmm. So while the second flute might be listening to the first flute might also notice that the second flute feels this phrase a little more on the backside of the beat and decides to go with them to make music more. Who's leading, who's following in that situation? They're trying to make the music together. And there's maybe a more established leadership role and a following role, but that doesn't mean that that's just always how it is. Now, in particular with the concertmaster, one thing that happens, like we talked about, the violins tend to be on the top. They tend to be playing the melody, and that tends to be the thing that the people hear. And so that's how a symphony orchestra has been designed, is that the violins are at the front. They are the closest to the audience, and they are the closest to the conductor. And in a way, yeah, I think I like that design. Like flute might get to have the melody a lot of times, and you can show certain things with your flute. You can make movements with it that show where you're thinking about doing it. But the very nature of a violin is that they're moving, and you can see their bow arm, and you can tell what kind of rhythm they're going to do. And so when other section leaders are determining where to place their notes or how to build their phrase, obviously we're all looking at the conductor, but we're trying to do that together. And so we need someone who's actually playing the music to be a focal point. And I think the concertmaster is a fairly good choice of where that maybe most often falls. Again, it depends on the piece. Also, there's like the Fauré Requiem, most of the piece, the violins don't even play. And the top might very well be the flute in that one. And maybe the flute should move to where the flutes, should move to where the violins are for that piece. Or the violas, maybe principal viola should be the one to stand up and tune the orchestra for that.
Well, yeah. There you go, Alyssa.
My dreams come true.
we know. We just have to play that piece.
Yeah. Well, Byron, for young players, violin players who might be listening, or maybe even their parents, what advice would you give to them?
2 pieces of advice. One, I would say listening to music is even more important than practicing. Learning to appreciate the music so that you love it and want to make it is more important than the physical ability to make it. And I think that comes in classical music with repeated listening, where that's the only thing you're doing, where your mind can follow the composer's train of thought without getting interrupted. Because once you can do that from the beginning to the end, you really know what the composer was trying to say. And more often than not, much more often than not, I think you'll find that you love what they were trying to say by taking that time. So that's my first piece of advice. Second piece of advice is that when you're trying to learn stuff on the violin, the mind comes first. always prioritize your ability to understand what's happening and to see it happening in your mind before playing it. If you can't play something that's too fast, it's not because your fingers haven't figured it out. It's because your mind hasn't slowed it down enough to be able to process what's happening. And only once it can do that can you speed it up. I would say the sky is the limit. If your brain can do it, your body is going to be able to do it.
Yeah, I love those pieces of advice. I think, the listening aspect is so important. We're in this business where we are all about the sound. And so having a really clear idea of what you want to sound like, how you want it to sound, I think is so key. And then this other piece of advice of having it in your mind is so useful. Even today, as being a professional musician, I think, going back to these fundamentals and just remembering that if you can strengthen those fundamental concepts of what we're doing, it just makes you more free to be able to express yourself on whatever instrument you choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Byron, before we wrap up, thank you so much for being here with us. We've got a fun little rapid fire question round for you. So just say the first thing that comes to mind, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, favorite piece to play on violin?
Sibelius Violin Concerto.
Yay, coming up soon, everyone. October
3rd.
If you weren't a musician, what would you be doing?
Teaching. Music or something else, philosophically.
Best snack during a rehearsal break?
Quest bar, crunchy kind.
Ooh, really?
Yep,
I do actually. I eat those too. I like the Oreos and cream.
That's the one I don't like. I like all the
Oh no. Noted. I won't give you one of mine for rehearsal break then.
Favorite music performance that you've seen?
It'd be a group of music performances. The Takash Quartet did a Beethoven string quartet cycle in Cleveland while I was there in the Rheinberger Chamber Music Hall, which is the best hall with the best string quartet playing the best music at the best level. What could beat that?
All right, and here's your last one. Favorite violin joke?
Oh God, do I even know one?
If you don't, we can.
I can substitute with some viola jokes, maybe.
Yeah, that was the first thing that came to mind was a viola joke.
No surprise there. For anybody listening, violas always get the brunt of the jokes.
Yeah. So what's yours?
Well, I mean, the difference. What's the difference between a violin and a viola?
That was what came in my head.
Yeah,
It burns longer. But you could just say a violin burns longer, but that's not true because it's
smaller. So yeah.
The violin joke is making fun of the viola.
Yeah.
There you go.
I did hear a violin joke once, and it had something to do with like the difference between first and second violins, but I cannot remember it anymore. So it's a terrible joke, but.
Well, tell people to call in with their favorite ones. Maybe they can our limited library.
Byron, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise with us.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you guys. It's really been a blast.
And thanks everyone for tuning in, and keep an eye out for our future episodes as we explore more corners of the orchestra.
We'll see you at the symphony. Thanks for tuning in to the Open Notes podcast. We appreciate your support for the arts. We'd love to know what you want to know, so send your questions and suggestions to podcast@fcsymphony.org.
For more information on the Fort Collins Symphony, visit our website at fcsymphony.org. We can't wait to hear from you. Until next time.
Bye.